I'm Jane from Carbon Retirement, and together with my colleague Dan, I set up this social enterprise almost 2 years ago now. And we set it up because we noticed a huge opportunity to make a really big difference to reduce industrial emissions in Europe. Climate change is a really big problem, and in 6 minutes I don't have time to go into all of the details of why this polar bear is looking so depressed. So what I'm going to do instead is talk through two specific solutions that people have come up with to climate change. One is carbon offsetting, and you can see somebody diligently planting a tree here, and the other is the EU emissions trading scheme, which is the scheme that European countries have set up to try and cap and push down European emissions. In principle, both of these two things are really good ideas. I mean, what better thing to do when you've reduced your emissions as far as possible, whether you're an individual or a business, than to take responsibility for the emissions that you can't avoid. And also the emissions trading scheme, despite some of the original problems when it was initially established, is now forecast to be responsible for up to 2 billion tonnes of emissions reductions by 2020. But both of these two things could be made to work an awful lot harder, and specifically with carbon offsetting, a lot of money is being flushed down the toilet. Now, you might have heard of some problems about it. It's been regularly reported in the press, the problems with carbon offsetting. But I want to just focus on two specifically shocking facts. The first is something that researchers at Stanford University in the US found when they looked into carbon offsetting projects, and that's that at least a third, and possibly up to 2/3 of carbon offsetting projects don't make any environmental difference at all. And the second fact is something that we found out when we did some research in the lead up to Copenhagen at the end of last year. Research that was published by the BBC. And that's that for every pound that's being spent on carbon offsetting projects, only 28 pence of it actually gets on the ground to the project that people are intending to fund. The rest is lost along the chain to brokers, banks, other intermediaries and consultants. So what we wanted to do was take all of this money and goodwill that's being directed towards carbon offsetting, that totals about £50 million a year in the UK, and direct it towards something that is going to make a difference to the environment. So briefly back to emissions trading. Emissions trading works by allocating a fixed number of permits. And for industrial companies, when they pollute, for every tonne of emissions that they emit, they have to buy one of these permits and hand it back to the government in their country. And this is the clever bit. We thought, what would happen if we bought some of these permits and removed them from the system? What we're trying to do is to take the £50 million that people at the moment are investing in mostly ineffective and sometimes unethical carbon offsetting projects, and use that money to buy pollution permits and remove them from the system. And what that means is, when a company comes along and needs to buy a permit, soon there's going to be none available. So instead of buying a permit and continuing to pollute, they have to reduce their emissions instead. Now, how does this differ from typical carbon offsetting? Well, we're different in 3 ways. The first is that it's the only way that you can 100% guarantee that the emissions reduction that you're paying for is actually going to happen. The second is that there's no complicated supply chain. We go directly to the market and buy out these pollution permits so that they can't be used. So there's nowhere to lose the 72p in every pound that's being lost at the moment. And the third is that critically, we reduce emissions in the developed world, where emissions per capita are really high and where the problem of our reliance on fossil fuels is the greatest. So we're incentivising and pushing, forcing companies to invest in low carbon technology rather than simply buying up permits and continuing to pollute. So what are we doing to get the idea out there? Well, we've done quite a lot of research on current forms of offsetting, and both that and our idea has cost us quite a bit of press coverage over the last few months. We've also got a number of high-profile supporters, specifically and importantly from environmentalists and groups that previously were anti-carbon offsetting, and now helping us to encourage businesses and individuals to remove pollution permits rather than investing in carbon offsetting. We've also won a number of awards. Our core costs for last year were funded by a £15,000 grant from Unlimited, who are a charity that funds social enterprises. And I won't go through them all, but the other most recent one is that Smarter.com named us as one of the top 5 UK small businesses for ethics in the last month. We've also significantly, in the last year, got a government accreditation, which means that the government are now recommending us as one of the best ways for companies to do their carbon offsetting. And that's given us a lot of credibility with the people that we're trying to promote this message to. And we're starting to get traction with the people who were previously spending money on other sorts of carbon offsetting, and with people who've never invested in carbon offsetting in the past because they were sceptical about it and now want to start to remove pollution permits. So we've got a number of not-for-profit and small ethical businesses who signed up. And significantly, in the last couple of months, we've had our first sign-up from a FTSE 100 company. So we're starting to get the sort of scale that we need, both to have a big impact on the number of permits and circulation in the emissions trading scheme, but also so that we can be financially sustainable. So our challenge with carbon retirement is scale. All of the companies that are doing carbon offsetting are doing it for a profit, and it's no surprise, probably no surprise to you, that a lot of them are actually owned by investment banks. So they've got the scale to and the incentive to keep their old model that isn't working going. What we need is scale to maximise the number of pollution permits we can take out, and also to generate financial sustainability. And we don't think that that's going to be that's going to take much. We've got our first FTSE 100 business, and we want to sign up 4 more large businesses in the next year to achieve both of those things. So we're not asking for money to remove more pollution permits, rather we're asking for funds to cover our core costs. The more time we can spend on getting the message out there, rather than working to fund on our part-time jobs to fund these costs, the greater scale we're going to get. And we're going to leverage the money from larger companies, so I'll leave you with that summary.